Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is The Other Thing I Do. My guest this week is Alex Mallari Jr., an actor you may know from Dark Matter, Code 8, Ginny and Georgia, and Workin' Moms, among plenty of other television and movie roles. Just this month, he turns up as a heavy chasing Ryan Reynolds through time in The Atom Project, as a free climber dealing with a life-changing injury on an episode of Transplant, and as the star of Hello Again, a romantic dramedy from Simu Liu and Natalie Younglai that dropped on CBC Gem in Canada last week. I just had Natalie on Friday, perhaps you remember. Anyway, it's a good show, and you should check it out. Alex picked Remember the Titans, Boaz Yakin's 2000 sports sleeper about black and white teenagers forced to become a real football team when their high schools are integrated in 1971 Virginia. Denzel Washington and Will Patton play their respective coaches, who must also learn to mesh their very different styles in order to lead the Titans to victory, and the ensemble includes Before They Were Stars appearances from Wood Harris, Ryan Hurst, Hayden Panettiere, Donald Faison, Kate Bosworth, and some goofy-looking kid named Ryan Gosling. I think he was young Hercules or something. What happened to that guy anyway? This is Someone Else's Movie.
It was always on repeat when I was a kid. I remember seeing it, and I was a little athlete back then. And I just loved every sport movie that I ever came across. But there was something about Remember the Titans that I was really drawn to, and I never understood it until I recently watched it. And I realized when I was making my list of movies, I realized that I'm a sucker for movies that teach people new perspectives. Specifically within a relationship. Every movie's about relationships, really, but there was something good ones, yeah. And I didn't connect that when I was younger. For me, when I was younger, I just thought, this is so cool to be part of this team, and I really enjoyed the building of the relationships between the white kids and the black kids. I guess growing up in Scarborough, you didn't really see that sort of segregation. It's just, your friends are your friends, and you got all sorts of friends. You got white friends, you got black friends, you got brown friends, you got everything. And that's the norm that I know. So the norm that I know, no pun intended, you're welcome. Yeah. So I think that's why, man.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it in a long time. And I watched it again last night because it's on Disney Plus, and it's a message picture that wouldn't be out of place in the 60s. I mean, it's set in 1971, but it feels like it was made in around the same era as like To Sir with Love or something like that. And Denzel Washington is absolutely the Sidney Poitier figure. But the movie keeps drifting away from him and spending more time with the kids. And you realize that it's selling the relationships in a way that absolutely makes sense for a modern film, right? Like, it's really more interested in the dynamics and interactions without coming up with sort of fake dramas for everybody to have to struggle with. There was so much time spent just watching them relate to one another, which really, I don't remember that vividly from the last time I saw it. It's just surprisingly, like, it's a machine tooled studio sports picture. But it breathes in a way that I just did not remember at all. Plus, of course, now you recognize everybody.
That as well. Yeah. Little Ryan Gosling. I forgot that he was in there. Yeah.
He's not even billed in the opening credits. Like, that's how small his part is.
No way.
Yeah. Because when he popped up, I'd forgotten he was in it. And when he popped up, it's like, wait, no, I just watched all the titles. If his name was there, I would have responded. It's like Wood Harris is named and Donald Faison is named. And then there he is in the background, this little skinny kid with the eyes that don't go in the same direction. It's like, that's Ryan Gosling.
Young Hercules.
But he's so present. Wow, I didn't know that. Right? Like,
he's so present.
He pulls focus in. There's a scene on a bus between it's Jerry and Julius. Ryan Hurst and Wood Harris are sitting together on the bus, and they're kind of having a fight about No, it wasn't the attitude reflect leadership. But yes, it was on the bus. It's earlier, right? It's like when he shuts him down for singing, I think. And Gosling is just following the conversation behind them, and his head is moving. He's tracking it. He's totally involved in the scene, even though he has no dialogue, and could have easily just not done anything. But it's like, no. This is just like, he's quietly it's not like he's stealing the scene, because if you didn't know who he was, you wouldn't be paying attention. But you'd also be like, oh, that guy's in the scene. He's part of it. And it feels like the weird generosity that's going on in the entire film between all the actors, like all the younger actors, as they sort of communicate with each other and they let their guards down slowly. And yeah, it's there's more to it than I remembered. And I was kind of happy about that.
Yeah, same. I guess, as you get older, you acquire new perspectives and new experiences help you with that. But I loved it even more. I did. And I didn't realize how inclusive it was, because they had Sunshine, they called them. They had that going on, that storyline. And oh man, it was such a good film. And there was no singular hero, really. It was about the team. And I love that because I grew up in a team environment playing basketball. So I'm a sucker for anything team related, and it's cool. And just people doubting and you still make it through. So cool. Yeah, I love them.
So yeah, what was your team dynamic? I mean, did you guys have a coach who styled himself as a dictator and forced everyone to organize together, or was it more you're not?
I had a few different coaches. My one coach for the Scarborough Blues, Craig Walker, great man, great coach. He wasn't a dictator type. He was the type but he knew how to get the best out of all of us, both individually and collectively. And he allowed for freedom on the basketball court. And that's really where I found my footing. And if it wasn't for that freedom and that trust, I don't think the game would have been as fun. But then in high school, I had a coach named Richard Gallagher, and he was very disciplined. There were a lot of rules, and it was quite the transition, but I loved him. I learned from him more than anyone else. With that coaching staff, I learned a lot from Ron Burrows and Jason Gill. Learned a lot from them as well. And funny enough, we were the Mother Teresa Titans.
Oh yeah.
So it was cool. And Shem, who where's that Kiss? He works over there now. Yeah, he used to do our announcements. And it was just the neatest thing. We would turn the lights off and we'd play the Chicago Bulls intro, and Shem with his voice, big voice, would do our intros. And it was the coolest thing. And we ended up winning the Quad A Officer Championship one year. And we weren't even supposed to be a Quad A because we're such small. We had like 200-300 kids. Mm-hmm. And we're going up against schools that had thousands of kids. So it was really neat. And that was my high school experience. And I always related that to Remember the Titans.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that one line, my attitude reflect leadership, that one I took with me. I still do. I still take it.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to figure out this time through, and you were saying that the coach who was the hardest on you was the one that, or maybe the most dictatorial, was the one you learned the most from. And is that, so I couldn't tell this time through whether Boone's strategy is to unite the kids against him, like their collective frustration with his rules sort of brings them together. It's one of the earliest moments that they're bonding over how rough he is.
That's interesting.
And I was trying to figure out if it's intentional, because Washington plays it without any hints in any direction, right? Like he is just putting up this authoritarian stance in front of the kids. We see that's not who he is, because we see him with his family, and we see him with Bill Yost when they're sort of warming up to each other. He is a human being. Like he's not a soldier who just ended up in the wrong line of work. But the kids respond to him the way like a platoon would to a drill sergeant. And I was trying to figure out if that's deliberate in the writing, like if it's a strategy that we just have to figure out for ourselves over the course of it. Like, do coaches do that? Is that something that bonds the team by working against the coach, or is it? Am I completely misreading this because I've never been in a sport?
I don't think that would work, because you wouldn't respect the system in place. You have to respect the system. You have to, in order for the system to work, you have to respect it. And that system derives from the coach's vision and what he or she sees fit, be it for the season, be it for the team or the entire program. But that is interesting because, he had a totally different dynamic he had to work with. He had to work with segregation, trying to get white kids to work with black kids and black kids to work with white kids. And it was, that's a tough dynamic, especially him taking that head coach spot that he didn't want and the kids never knew. So it's, I don't think that's what he wanted to do. Anyways, it wouldn't have worked, but that's such an interesting perspective considering the dynamic that he had to work with. Yeah.
I think it's Washington's essential unreadability, like the way he always holds something back from the camera and from the audience.
So good.
He can be magnetic in anything. And this is before he kind of I guess it was right around that same time because he'd made The Hurricane the year before and he'd just done stuff like The Bone Collector. And so he's coming out of all of these big showy performances, right? Like, can you do an entire movie lying in bed and still be Denzel Washington's like, yes, he can. I don't like The Hurricane as a movie, but I think he's terrific in it. It's just the stylistic stuff and all the historical shortcuts that the script brings in to make it a palatable, conspiracy picture, basically, when it really needs to be a story about systemic racism and a complete injustice that the entire, the structure of America brought down on this one guy. Even the fact that they collapsed the Canadians, it was like 8 people who worked to get this guy out of prison, and they turned him into John Hannah, Deborah Kara Unger, and a third person I don't even remember. It's like, have more actors. It's really not going to kill the movie to have to acknowledge the complexity of the story. But after all of that, he showed up in this, and you remember the poster is hung on his face, and the marketing is all on Denzel, and it's not his story. It's an incredibly gracious performance where he's just getting out of the way so often. And part of it is structural, right? Because you spend time with the kids. But even in his scenes, his scenes with Nicole Larry Parker are so sweet and quiet. And he's just he's showing you who this guy is without the weight of the world on his shoulders, and how he's sort of there's the call to action, I guess you'd call it, that initial galvanizing moment where everybody shows up outside his house and he decides to take on the Sidney Poitier function, to become the hero that they need, which just means making himself miserable and putting his family in harm's way. And then every now and then Washington just drops it all and shows you what he's feeling. And it's that's a star-making performance in a supporting role. It's if this was an unknown actor, he'd be a movie star. And of course he already is. Yeah, he would. That one scene where they started losing, or they came up with a big loss, and he's in the locker room and he's talking to the kids, being like, this team is, God, I can't remember the team's name, but they were undefeated. And then he said, but they don't have this dynamic to work with. And there's just this presence that he holds, and it's the same presence you're talking about, where he says everything that he needs to say, but he holds on to enough where he doesn't lose his power, and he just doesn't give it all up. But how did? I don't know what he does. Geez, maybe it's just his look. He's in his intensity, but even with his intensity, he doesn't give it all up. Recently watched not all of it, just the first bit of it because I had to put my kid to sleep. But Macbeth. Oh yeah, that's an incredible performance. His presence is it's unmatched, and I'm hoping as I get older, I'm able to gather that much. Yeah. Well, his greatest skill as an actor is his ability to withhold, I think. And Macbeth is perfect because in this version, it's somebody who has pretended to be a good person his whole life and just waited for the chance to strike. That interpretation, because they're so much older than the roles are usually played. Washington and McDormand both have this sort of seething, impatient patience where it's no, this is our time. This is what we have to do right now. And when Washington puts aside the hail fellow thing, it's terrifying because you see who he really is and there's nothing in there. And his ability to shut himself down which he's done.
It'll still be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And just turn off his eyes, right? Like he can still deliver, he can still hold himself physically and be physically intimidating or interesting or dynamic, but just have nothing behind his eyes. I hadn't seen him do it in the longest time, and it's really disturbing to see him turn it on.
Very,
and the way that the whole thing is shot like an expressionist picture from the 20s, like it looks like, you know, the Passion of Joan of Arc half the time with the staging that they've used. And so you're just drawn to faces and shoulders and jawlines. And it's this, like the architecture of the movie stars that they've cast in it is just, it's remarkable. And see the whole thing when you can and watch it on a really big screen, because it's an overwhelming experience.
Oh man, yeah, no, I had my soundbar on every day. It's like you got to, because that score is really good too. I watched the trailer while I was shooting Code 8, and prior to that, I'm a big Denzel fan. Prior to shooting Code 8, I was watching Training Day, and I mean he makes use of that blank stare you're talking about, and it's the same stare that I was trying to refer to for Remember the Titans, and I've tried it in self tapes. I just remember getting feedback from my reps, be like, "You got to make it a little more interesting." You're like, what are you doing here? I'm just like, listen, I'll get there, but I'm trying something. Little do they know I was trying the Denzel intensity. Man.
You also have to repeat the last line of your dialogue. That's his other tick, which he doesn't do in Titans, which I thought was great. He does it in Training Day, but it's like this weird emphasis thing where he's reassuring himself that his plans are going to work. But then he started to lean on it a lot. Like Tony Scott just let him get away with it constantly. I think, like, is it Unstoppable or Pelham, where he just, every scene, he buttons himself. He just ends by repeating his last line of dialogue. Really? It's like, it's obviously something he feels comfortable doing, but I think he's way more interesting when he's not doing something I've seen him do before. And so like Titans does it, and Macbeth, of course, doesn't allow it because of the language. Right. And he's just, you take away his stuff, his comforts, and he is a more interesting actor. I mean, I assume it's the case with almost anybody. But with Washington, his intensity is so interesting that when he's got nothing else to fall back on, you just get this honesty out of him. And in Remember the Titans and in Training Day, you've got, and those were a year apart, which still kind of blows my mind.
Remember the Titans and Training Day were just a year apart? Yeah,
like fall 2000 and TIFF 2001. And
wow,
it's remarkable because he looks so much older in Remember the Titans. Yeah, like he's just playing somebody with weight on him, physical weight on his shoulders. Like he's working with history and he's moving slowly, like he's trying to command respect just by taking space in the room. And in Training Day, he's just wild. He's flailing all over the place with the rage that's coming out of him. And whatever the substances are that are used in the story. I think it's angel dust, right? No, he gives that to Hawk. But
he gives that to Hawk in the car.
Yeah, but he is so, like, it's fun to watch him. Like, it's fun to watch him actively fuck with people the way he does in Training Day, but it's also really interesting to watch it in contrast to this. And like, I know he's an actor, that's how it works. You go from role to role, but in both of them, he's using his essential gravitas just in completely different ways. It's like, this is that movie star versus character actor conversation again, right? Like, character actors are cast to be themselves in different circumstances, and movie stars are cast to do one thing that the audience likes, but he's walking the line between both.
Yeah, he does really well too. I think he's just, I don't know. I've seen very few interviews with him. He's articulate and he's very present, but he doesn't seem as intense. Or is he? I don't know. I would love to have a sit down with him. Have you ever talked to him?
No, we've never met. Don't know why. It's just never worked out.
I hope it does.
Yeah, I think that stars have just never aligned.
Do you think he's just over it, and that maybe that's what he brings in? He's just really over everything.
I wouldn't blame him. Like, he's been at this since St. Elsewhere, right? Like, that's the early 80s.
Jeez.
He's a veteran. He's been doing this for 40 years.
Has he ever? He's a master.
But he doesn't.
What is he ever?
Yeah, he doesn't lose steps, right? Like, so even when he doesn't spend a lot of time with the younger actors except for Hayden Panettiere, who I'd also forgotten that was her, as Yost's daughter.
Yeah.
And she's like
excellent too.
Yeah, it's a total one-note character, but she refuses. Like, she's just got so much energy that you don't care that she's only really performing the I love football function. She's just so good at it.
She's so good at it. Yeah.
And Patton's great with her. And then there are those little moments that Washington has where he just has to have this flicker of warmth with her, and he doesn't oversell it because she's so big and he can underplay it. And it feels like he's treating her as an equal, as an actor, not the character.
Yeah.
But like, he's giving her the room. And again, that's not something he usually does in these big star roles that he gets. So he just seems to understand, like, his function here is to be the support and deliver.
Well, him by treating her that way just made her as strong, gave her performance way more strength.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially there was that one scene where she was at the house before the rock was thrown.
Yeah.
And she had that little interaction with Denzel's daughter in the movie. And I thought that was hilarious, man. I don't play with dolls. I'm accessorizing.
Yeah. It's great because it's just a little bit of humanity or depth for the characters that otherwise would just be like Coach's kid.
Yeah. Who plays Yost? What's his name?
Oh, Will Patton. Who's this?
Will Patton.
Yes.
Like,
he's
pretty similar to Armageddon. That was it, right?
Was he in that?
He was. It's
been so long since I've seen him. Was he one of the astronauts, or he must have been?
He was one of the astronauts.
One of the miners?
Yeah, he brought. He was one of the miners, and he brought there was one scene where he brought a little. Was it like a toy truck or something to his kid, who he hasn't seen in a while? But he's so good at that note.
Armageddon, to my mind, is filed away as the movie that had better screenwriters in the cast than it had on the page. It's like Billy Bob Thornton had an Oscar for Sling Blade. Bruce Willis wrote Hudson Hawk. Ben Affleck had an Oscar for Good Will Hunting. Steve Buscemi wrote Trees Lounge. And they're just standing around delivering this. They're not even trying to make it better. They're just cashing the checks. But yeah, Will Patton, I'd forgotten. I love Will Patton. He's become so like a semi-regular for Kelly Reichardt's films. He's wonderful in Wendy and Lucy.
Wendy Lucy, yeah.
Has so much compassion, so much kindness that, like, it echoes to who he is here. Like, Yost is the one who says you're writing the kids too hard, and he's looking out for everybody all the time, and selflessly putting aside his own ambitions to stay and work with this guy who's, as far as he's concerned, has taken his job. Although he knows it's more complicated than that. It's also, there's a rivalry there, and it kind of boils away. It's because it's all Patton, right? It's not Washington. Herman Boone is there. He owns his space. He's not giving anything back. He won't, and he sort of apologizes, but he won't quit. So it's Yost who has to come around to him. And like, there is no speech. There's no reconciliation. It just kind of happens in Patton. Like, he just lets it be okay in a really interesting, calm way. I mean, there's that one standoff where he's like, if you hire me, you hire my assistant. But that's as close as they get to a confrontation, right? Like, there's no resentment. He just does the job. Yeah. Even when his assistant was like, come with me. He's just like, well, you do what you have to do. But it wasn't conflicting. It was at the same time, it was, but at the same time, the way he performed it, just his energy, it's just, I can accept that. But I gotta do this kind of thing. And then when in the bar, when he's telling everyone that, I'm going to move. I'm going to go somewhere else. Yeah, yeah. It was gentle, but there was this conflict that was difficult at the same time. He's just so good. God. Yeah. It occurred to me, it's the closest the movie comes to the not all white guys thing, right? Like, he's a decent person who isn't prejudiced, but never calls anyone else out on it because he knows the neighborhood, he knows the environment. Like, that's what he's doing in that scene. He's making sure nobody picks up torches and goes after Boone. by being as conciliatory as possible, right? Like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fine. Don't get angry on my behalf. But he
I
never
never
uses
picked
the
that up.
language, right? Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just, I caught it with, it's in this, I mean, the movie hammers down the racism button pretty hard with Kate Bosworth, I think, unfortunately, who's just given that role of the white girl who just doesn't want to be around black people, can't articulate why, doesn't have a reason,
right.
just doesn't like them. And you're like, oh, hey, that's Kate Bosworth. She's doing a pretty good job with this like cartoonish, unplayable role, even at the very end where she's shaking, she shakes Julius's hand, and it's like, this is an invention of the movie. No question. This did not happen. It's just like, I don't even know if that character existed, if that person is real, because her function is just to
really hammer it in there.
Yeah, run down the checklist of racism is bad. But but everyone else is allowed to have, like, they have moments of anger, they have moments of understanding. There's that early scene or that scene in the middle where Julius calls Jerry out on saying they like to party and brag.
Oh, right.
And Jerry tries to come, like, it's a really great little moment for Ryan Hurst, who stumbles over that. It's no, they're them, you're you. And he can't articulate it. He can't explain why. He knows what he's saying, but he can't figure it out. And like there was some criticism when the movie came out. I was reading some older reviews. Like, even Ebert said that it doesn't really care about how the black people feel. It cares about how the white people feel. But I don't know that that's true. Because
I don't know
the actors are all showing us how they feel. And Wood Harris, who's like 10 years older than him, like he's 30. Julius, he's going to be Avon Barksdale in 4 years on The Wire. And there's a scene where, like, in the 1981 scenes, they gave him a receding hairline that actually makes him look pretty much his own age, which is really weird because he's pretty convincing as 20. But Wood Harris is like, Julius is way more informed than a 20-year-old would be in that era, because Wood Harris is older and he's thinking it through. But that scene, like that later scene with the cop who pulls him over to compliment him, like a white cop pulls up to Julius on the street when he's going to visit Jerry's family. And Harris plays that so beautifully. Like, it's not just I am surprised that this is happening to me. It's, I am scared and surprised. Like, he can't look him in the eye. He stammers over his politeness. He's like, he doesn't know how to act. And it's really interesting to see this is 20 years ago, and that level of awareness about racially charged interactions with police in a Disney picture, that was like shockingly fresh to me.
Yeah, I was surprised that it was Disney.
Yeah. Well, Disney had this whole run of sports pictures. I think they were cranking out one a year for a while. It's like Mystery in Alaska and Miracle, and there was another. Oh, The Rookie, the one where Dennis Quaid is the middle-aged phenom who discovers he's got a good arm. It's good. It's like, it's a meat and potatoes sports picture.
That's not the one where the kid breaks his arm, right?
No, that's Rookie of the Year. Like, that's from the mid 90s. That was probably on cable all the time too.
Oh, I love that.
But yeah, no, The Rookie it's a much more serious, like, it's a middle-aged sports picture. It's it's not bad. I think John Lee Hancock directed it. It's very steadfast and straightforward, but it knows what it's doing, and it hits all those buttons. But it's not about anything other than one guy getting his dream. Remember, the Titans is dealing with stuff. It's got like the Ethan Suplee arc of someone who just cheerfully refers to himself as white trash and has no expectations of his own life.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That scene was, and then Coach Boone says, I want you to give me all your test scores. Oh yeah. That was such a good scene. Yeah. I took a lot from his character, actually, because to be that humble, to say, hey, because in everything I've attempted at life, I'm like, I'm going to be the best at this. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to be the best at it. I guess it still lingers there. But I always think about his character, because of that one speech where he's in front of everyone. He's like, I'm up here and figure if I'm going to get through school, I might as well hit a few people while I'm at it.
Yeah.
And then, I'm just white trash when he's talking to, what's his name? Rev. Mm-hmm. Just that humble way of being. I think about him often. Of how relaxed he is. And by the way, he's incredibly jacked now.
Ethan Suplee. Yeah, he's
my
I saw him in something maybe 2 or 3 years ago and was like, I'm glad he's healthy. but it was jarring. Like, it was really weird. And his weight's always fluctuated. Like, he's, I'm pretty sure he was in the Kevin Smith pictures around that time. And he would just be up and down depending on, when they shot. There are scenes in Dogma where he's carrying 20 extra pounds just because of how long the shoot was. And he was either losing it or gaining it. But he's got this great, he showed up. I remember seeing him in Cold Mountain and thinking, oh, they found a frame for him. He looks completely believable as this mountain man character, just a guy wearing a bunch of heavy cloaks. He's got this timelessness. I mean, he works as a 1970s football player. Like, he's totally convincing, and he's huge. I think he's padded too, because there's some shape stuff that kind of looks weird when you see him out of the football uniform.
Okay.
But he's also so good at just not asking for any of the sympathy ticks. Like, it's not just I'm a big guy, it's also the I'm a dumb guy. He just doesn't go there. He's playing,
there's never a poor me moment.
Yeah. And he's like, when he's celebrating the C+ that gets him into college, it's not condescending in any way. Like, the movie does not encourage us to giggle that this guy is happy that he got a C+. He worked and he got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very blindside kind of vibe for sure. Like, there was one character that also drew in that that racism hammer. It was early on, and I picked this up when I was rewatching it because I guess it just went right over my head growing up. It was when Patton was being spoken to by someone from the school board, and he was just getting the news that they're giving the head coach position to Boone. And he says, everyone in the district, all the coaches in the district are white, which is fine, that part. And then he goes, we had to give them something.
Right.
It's just the world we live in now, God forbid, or God save us. I was like, oh my God, in a Disney movie, that's intense.
Yeah. Isn't that the guy who played that's Bosley, right? That's Ryan Gosling's character's dad.
Oh, is it?
I think so. I want to say yes. Recall. He shows up later in a similarly like ragey kind of way. And it's what paves the way for Gosling's sacrifice at the end, or just switching out with Petey and letting Donald Faison come in. Like, that's that kind of little tiny refutation of generational racism. Like, he's just rejecting, and his dad's furious.
Change. Yeah.
Put my kid in, right? I think that's the same character.
No. It was someone. It was someone from the board. It was, yeah. This is Gosling's dad, and it was a little larger.
Okay,
if I remember. Yeah,
there is a generic Georgia look in the film to a lot of the parents.
Yeah,
like, they're all big angry people.
And Patton again just gracefully brings it back down to that chill mode of just, this is, I can accept it. Not even I can accept it. It's just like I'm just soaking in this moment, and that, wow. Now I'm just like, I just wish there was like an audition I could do right now. I get in these modes where it's just like, I want to do this character now. I want to feel this right now in a scene. Where is it? I should call you every time that there's a scene I want to do. Hey, Norm,
I'll get you there.
Let's talk about something. Yeah, man.
I mean, I know people have these tics that they can use to get in the zone. Some people, the way people catch accents by using a specific phrase or something, and then they can do it. But it's such a mystical thing. Like, I don't pretend to understand acting. I just know it when I see it. And it's so interesting to watch, especially in a movie like this, where you have all of these different styles flying around. Like, you could not tell me that there's a movie that has room for like Denzel Washington, Donald Faison, Ryan Gosling, Wood Harris, and Will Patton. I couldn't conceive of it. But then you say, well, it's a football picture. And it's like, oh, of course, because that's an ensemble thing. Like, your brain can handle all these different things, and they all work for character buttons, and they all bring out stuff that in each other, the contrast is what makes it work.
Yeah. Have you ever had a movie where reading it, you're trying to figure out, I don't think this is going to work out. But then you watch it and you're just like,
oh, I see.
Oh, I get it. And then you fall in love with it. Have you had that?
I try to know as little as possible going in.
Oh, okay.
Like I don't even watch trailers if I can help it. I just don't want to
Yeah.
know. I don't want images. I don't want to have to, like, while I'm watching it, try to figure out, well, that guy's not going to get hurt in this scene because I know he's got a hat on in another scene that I haven't seen yet. Like all that stuff.
Interesting.
It's this weird compulsive thing. I know it and I embrace it about myself. But there are movies that surprise me, just in terms of the story they're telling or the people behind it. And it's like, oh,
Okay.
this is actually pretty great. I'll say, you know what? Galaxy Quest actually is the best example of the me dreading something because it sounded awful.
I have not watched it because it sounds awful. So
it is so good. It's so good. It is the best version of itself, right? Like it's one of the earliest mashups. It's Star Trek and comedy and sort of self-mocking, self-reflexive comedy about, the premise. It's the cast of a crappy television, or the cast of a beloved but not so great television show from 10 years ago are recruited by aliens who think it was real to help them save the day from other aliens. And, also Tim Allen was in it. And that's all I knew, really. It's like, this sounds terrible. Right. Tim Allen in this movie. And then you watch it and within 5 minutes, it's a masterpiece. Like it is.
Within 5 minutes.
Seriously. It opens with a 2-minute clip from the show, and then it pulls out into a convention 10 years later with people discussing it and the cast being, they're fighting amongst themselves, not unlike a football team that hasn't had a coach bring them together yet. And then it just keeps going. It keeps building and finding new jokes and finding new performances. And Enrico Colantoni, who plays the lead alien captain, Mathazar, it's impossible to explain what he does, but he is giving a performance of an alien pretending to be a human that is so specific and weird and fun that basically that's his audition tape, is those aliens. The producers showed his tape to every other actor who was playing a Thermian and said, do what he's doing. And he invented this species. It's incredible. Anyway, yes. So I went and saw that, dreading it, at a Wednesday night preview, Christmas 1999, with a full house. And within 5 minutes, we were all having the best time. And by the end of it, it's like, this is one of my favorite things.
Okay.
It's marvelous. And you'll love it because it's got the same kind of, genre awareness as like the Atom Project, where it knows what it's doing with all the things that have existed beforehand.
Right.
And it's just mashing them into something new and also really, really funny and really, really smart.
Okay. So yeah, I like the witty stuff. I can't do big. I have a hard time with big.
It's not
a very hard time.
It's not that. It's big. It's like, it's a big scale story, but the stakes are really, really personal.
Okay.
And, Alan Rickman, Sam Rockwell, Justin Long, Sigourney Weaver, who am I forgetting? Daryl Mitchell. Tony Shalhoub. Tony Shalhoub is in it. Missy Pyle. Rainn Wilson before The Office. Rainn Wilson once told me he's been in 2 perfect movies and they were back to back. It was Galaxy Quest and Almost Famous. And it's like, yeah, actually, I totally get that.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it's wonderful.
Okay.
You should definitely watch that. Next time you're sad or depressed about something, watch that. Watch Galaxy Quest. It'll change your life.
All right, Norm, I'll see you in a bit. I'm going to go watch the movie now.
Perfectly fair. We've already done an episode on it. So, but yeah, so this does kind of bring us around to the stuff that influences people. So is there anything of Remember the Titans that you've borrowed or taken with you? And in this case, I kind of want to know if there are any character bits or acting business that you tried to steal, because there is so much going on with all the different styles and all the different takes.
Yeah.
It's not like there's room in Hello Again for you to do, angry football grit.
There was time traveling and Remember the Titans when they go to Gettysburg. No, it would have to be Harris's line of attitude reflects leadership.
Yeah. That's more of a motto, right?
It is. Yeah. And as far as like acting bits, certainly Denzel's just leadership and ability to command. It's something I can't even say that I take it with me because I can't say that I have it. It's something that I'm always working towards and forever inspired by. Mm-hmm. so I guess this is just like a forever just trying to chase Denzel kind of moment, and realizing, oh shoot, that's a guy I like, or really look up to. But yeah, no, it's from that movie. What I take is something I've always loved, and that's relationships, and how, shoot, I guess that's what really ties into Hello Again.
Mm-hmm.
It's relationships and the importance of attending to them and nourishing them, because that's what really drives me as an actor and as a person. Is the importance of relationships.
And Hello Again, like that's a project that lets you reinterpret the relationships your character has with other people through the time loop conceit. You get to have different interactions and play different versions of even Jaden has to change, right? As he's faced with these different potential versions of his family and friends. So yeah. I've always wanted to ask, did you shoot this in sequence? Like, how do you modulate something?
No.
You don't know, huh?
No, it was, listen, that is all thanks to our AD keeping us in line, and Melanie. God, she was just a wicked leader, making sure that we're on the right timeline and obviously continuity. Mm-hmm. But we did not shoot it in sequence. We shot it based off of really location.
Yeah.
And it was 5 days, roughly 100 pages. And it was very, very demanding.
Oh my God.
Work-wise and mentally, and especially emotionally. But we did not shoot in sequence, and that was tough. And that's why I always, have to tip my hat to the support that I had on that set, and the purpose, keeping the purpose in mind of knowing that it's what it means to, what we want it to mean for the Asian community, for sure.
Yeah,
I wish we saw shot in sequence. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, I would stand on set and my nose would just start bleeding as soon as someone called action, trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be. But
me too.
Yeah, maybe it's a running thing you have to deal with, like the deterioration of time travel. But I talked to Natalie and Melanie, and they said the same thing, like the idea of making a web series, a feature film, however you want to frame this project. It's a story that focuses entirely on two Asian leads, top of the call sheet, and an Asian Canadian, and make it about their worlds. And I think it was Natalie who said that she also freaked out when she realized that this was going to drop the same day as Everything Everywhere All at Once, as though there isn't room for more than one project.
Yeah.
With an Asian family, or at its core, an Asian lead. Yeah. And she's like, and then she corrects herself. It's like, no, there is room. Of course there's room. Because some people want comedy and some people want action. Some people want a web series and some people want to go to a movie theater. Like there is a range. Just the same way there's a diaspora, right? Like there's always going to be more than one story. And I'm so glad that I'm just drowning in it right now, because there's everything. Like, and Natalie picked Turning Red for her episode, which is another story of an Asian Canadian family going through some stuff.
Oh, that was so good.
It's great, isn't it?
That was really good. I love that one. I watched admittedly, I watched Turning Red before I watched The Adam Project on that day. Mainly because I got a 5-year-old, but
yeah, well, you know what happens in The Adam Project.
Yeah, that too. I don't know. There's that little guilt because I'm part of it. Sure. But that was so good.
How did it play for the 5-year-old?
No, he loved it.
Yeah,
he loved it. But I think he got annoyed when my fiance and I would ever pause every 5 minutes, be like, "Oh, look, this is this. It's the sniffy markers. It's 501. It's Spadina. It's Old Chinatown. It's oh man, yeah." So I think he got annoyed. He didn't get a really good watch of it because we kept pausing. Listen, we got to explain this to you. We didn't text. No one used a flip phone to text back then when we were kids.
God, it's a whole different world. I can't imagine explaining, even the last 5 years, explaining it to somebody who hasn't experienced, what it was like before the internet, before 2003, right? They have minimal COVID. Access. Yeah, well, sure. God, that's right. 5 years old. That's a child who became sentient during lockdown.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember his first day of senior kindergarten. He was all excited. There was a video I posted, and he was just like, I'm going to my first day of school in person. and I was like, oh my God, that's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. And I joked around with Winnie not long ago, saying how, I know less about Zoom than my 5-year-old does, because he did virtual school all last year.
Sure.
And I got to ask him questions. Hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? He'll teach me. So it's weird times. Cool times.
Children are the future. Assuming we have one, I guess. It's good that the kids will be there to explain how it works.
We'll see if we make it.
Yeah. So far, so good. And there's stuff to watch if we get locked down again. You're in everything, so that'll work out.
Oh, man, I wish I could be more things. Yeah. Yeah, but hello again. Excited.
My thanks to Alex Mallari Jr., who you can see in The Atom Project on Netflix, in Season 2, Episode 10 of Transplant on ctv.ca and Crave, and in Hello Again on CBC Gem. Watch them all, why don't you? Thanks also to Winnie Wong. She knows what she did. You can find Alex on Twitter at Alex Mallari Jr., Alex Mallari Jr., all one word. And you can find Remember the Titans on Blu-ray and DVD from Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment and streaming on Disney+. It's also available to rent or buy on most VOD platforms. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. And once again, I remind you that I've made the first year of this podcast available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. The first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 46 of which aren't currently available anywhere else, at payhip.com/Semcast. Check it out and see what the show sounded like 7 years ago. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps. It truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your booster when you can. I'll see you next time.